Hey guys, guess what? The shop is done. Who wants to see a tour? This has been a long time coming and a lot of work, so I'm really excited to show you. Okay, John, give us a glimpse.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't necessarily remember what it looked like before, if you scroll through our social media history, you should find videos. We did a shop tour, a live video shop tour, and you could find it there for comparison. But basically, the walls were cinder block. The rafters had a lot of clutter in them. All the pieces of equipment were pretty close together. There wasn't this nice kind of open space. And there was a lot of stuff. All of John's hanging systems on the walls came out from the wall quite a distance because he was using big, bulky storage systems, egg crates and things like that. And so now he has prioritized kind of things flat against the wall, lots of extra space. And so even though we lost some space with the insulation, of course, he technically gained more room just by organizing his stuff a little bit better. You this kind of look over here, and we'll talk about what this room is in a little bit. We'll also talk about what that crate is in a little bit. But first, John, let's start at this end, and you can just kind of talk through what you did. First of all, maybe just tell us about this garage and kind of what you had to work with.
Okay, so this garage is about 20 feet this way and about 30 feet this way. It's a little less than 20 and a little more than 30. But really, it's a pretty average, it's a one stall garage, but it's a little bit bigger. It's like a 1.5 stall garage, essentially. Pretty common in America to have a 1.5 stall garage. It's not like the greatest size for a professional workshop. And so the idea is to get as much productivity into a reasonably small space as possible. And I have a lot of reasonably large tools, like this lathe, which is... it's a table leg lathe, so you can do up to 50 inches, which is a huge lathe considering that had to fit. You got to have a long run to be able to operate a table saw with in-feed and out-feed. You got to have the same long run to operate a surface planer and the same long run to operate a jointer. The jointer is right there. All this stuff takes up a huge amount of space, so you have to imagine not just the size of the equipment, but you have to envision the length you'll need to be able to run a board through it and pace it all off and sort of stack it all in the most efficient possible way. I think I've done that. Obviously, this might move around, but I think I've sort of positioned everything in the most efficient manner.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk, since we're on this end, let's just start literally with the garage door because that's right here. And what this insulation is. This was stuff that was new to me. So maybe you'll be new to some other people too who are trying to make use of their garages in the winter time.
One of the weak points in insulating any garage is the garage door because it's just metal, it's tin. It's got basically R0 if you don't insulate it. So this is a kit you can buy on Amazon for $80, and it's just fiberglass insulation with a plastic backing that's white, so it's a little bit more resilient and it doesn't leach fiberglass into the air. You just basically put it in and kind of tack it in place. I'm in the process of taping it in to make it a little bit more rigid, but you can just lift it up, lower it down. It's really simple. It changes nothing about the garage door. I'll put some weather stripping in to stop the wind, but so far it's proved to be very effective.
Meaning that the garage door is still actually useful.
Yes.
So there's a lot of other places that, I've seen when people do different options where they have to basically just get rid of their garage door.
Mm-hmm. That was my other option, is just turn it into a wall with a small man door instead of a garage door.
But this was better.
Yes.
Not only did it retain, a big garage door for getting stuff in and out, including the projects you make, but it's still a garage door for, for resale value. If the next person actually wants it to be a garage,
yes,
it's still a garage. What about kind of economically compared to if you had just removed the door?
Well, there's this other option, which is you basically build two massive doors that are movable 2x4 walls with big hinges, right? That's the other option.
So it's like a garage door that isn't automatic.
Yeah, but it opens like so, right?
Right.
That's I priced out the insulation for this kit was cheaper than just the hinges for that system. Now, to be fair, that system is probably better insulation.
Okay.
But this is a really reasonably small space. I'm gambling that this will work fine over the winter.
Maybe you already said it, but in case I missed it, what R level is this?
This is R, I think, 7.
Okay.
The wall insulation is R13.
Okay, so it's not quite as good.
But it's like having a big window.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about this behind you. So let's talk about, doing things flat against the wall. Maybe you should put that out so people can figure out what the heck this even is.
Okay, so this is my weightlifting system.
Has nothing to do with Anger Grove, but this is his man cave too.
Yes. So, I need a place to do bench pressing. Because I do quite a bit of that. So, essentially, I used to have a power rack that was a full rack. It had this system again up front, so you could do like heavy squats with a safety bar. I don't do a lot of squats. I do mostly deadlift and bench press, and so you don't need anything for the deadlift, but for the bench press, you need a rack. And I wanted a way to keep my weights in here and still be able to work out, but have it in a very condensed area. And really, this comes down to I lose 8 inches off the wall, and
this is
that's not bad.
It's hinges. You have a little clip up here to keep
Got a little clip up here, and then this,
they're just all hinges.
This folds out. And, very simple, but really sturdy, and very efficient in terms of space. Because you got to be incredibly efficient if you want to work in a garage this size.
Let's tuck over here. Let's keep going and show how you've utilized window space. So one of the tricks John figured out was not cluttering the window, but still being able to use the window since there's not a lot of, since it's a small garage, so you kind of need to make every bit count.
The other thing in a small garage is you need to have a really good dust collection. Otherwise, it just gets caked in dust immediately. So I hooked up a hose here. I have one dust collection unit here, but it's not the massive kind that's stationary and has tubes installed permanently. You hook it up to each machine as you use them. So in order to make that efficient, you need to make the connections really quick. So the tube for this, the vacuum tube for this, just swings out.
Again, on a hinge.
On a hinge.
Get
and
that
you just
in the shot.
connect it,
show that.
and there you go. Turn this bad boy on, and it sucks out most of the sawdust from that. But also, I can just disconnect this, roll it over here, click it on for this. For the table saw, I can do the same thing for my jointer. I don't have a good system for the lathe because there is not a good system for the lathe. When you use the lathe, everything gets covered in dust chips, and you just have to sweep it up. There's no way around it.
I should also point out that in order to make this fit, it does stick into the window a little bit, and so John did have to be a little bit creative because it wasn't quite tall enough to do that, just to get some of that height.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm kind of giving everybody a tour and, the broad glance, I think one obvious question is, where's your heat source?
And it is in here. It is in
this little side room. Yeah, this is not a bathroom, which is what it kind of maybe people would assume. I need to stay out so there's some light. But there's the wood stove with rock and some tin. And what is this room, John?
Well, this is a sauna I built because before I insulated the actual shop, I just worked out here all winter anyway. I built a timber frame in here when it was 20 below. It was kind of ridiculous. But my strategy in the last few winters has been to be able to heat myself up in a sauna that's like 200 degrees and build a sort of a bank of heat in all my garments. So I would wear coveralls and a jacket and, a hat and a dust mask and everything. And then I would just go into the sauna and heat up that 3 inches of padding with 200-degree heat. And then I could come out here and work for like 45 minutes before I was freezing cold again. And then I'd go back in. I actually liked having a sauna. It was nice. I liked sweating it out in the winter. And so I just kept that.
Because you didn't want to lose the sauna.
I didn't want to lose the sauna.
Even though you would have gained space.
I would have gained space, but I like the sauna, so I'm keeping the sauna. What I did for the heat, and it turned out fantastic, is I took a pipe, a T-pipe, and I put it around my stovepipe here. You can see there's a larger pipe around my stovepipe. And then I hooked it up through here to an HVAC fan that fits in an 8-inch pipe.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to go to the other side so you can see the external kind of exit of that fan. There it is.
When you heat up the stove, if you plug this in, I'm only going to plug it in for a little while because it's loud.
It's actually not too bad. That's as loud as it gets. So it's not great for a video, but for doing some woodworking, your woodworking tools are louder than that. So
that sucks air around the superheated stovepipe, which gets crazy hot, and it sucks air around it and pulls it out here. I gotta tell you, I've used it a couple of times. It heats this whole space up in like 20 minutes. It's fantastic.
So this is just our family freezer because we don't have room for it in our house. But while we're standing over here, because this kind of coincides, what is this crate you built?
This is for firewood. Some of it will come from firewood that I chop up outside. But some of this, the bane of every single woodworker's existence is all the scrap wood we create. We create stupid amounts of scrap wood, stuff that's too small to use for cutting boards, and it all piles up in massive piles, and nobody knows what to do with it. I thought ahead because I've dealt with this before. This is a very large crate for throwing scrap wood that will be sorted into firewood, which will just be burned, and then the bigger stuff will be in one corner that I'll be able to use for cutting boards or whatever, or if it's especially cold, a fire.
Awesome. So you should go above that so you can show them your little door that I know you're very proud of.
Yes. Okay. A lot of wasted space usually in the utilities area. This is my 3-phase converter for that jointer. But this is an old shop. It has a very, very old wiring system and a very ugly fuse box, which is, the old school kind where when a fuse blows, it's like an actual fuse. You don't just flip a switch. You actually got to go buy the fuse. So that's ugly. So I built a nice, aesthetic,
that's beautiful
picture frame looking thing. I'm a fan.
And then I'm just going to show people kind of how you're using the window ledge. John put a little actual shelf here to store some stuff on. See his beautiful clamp system. And then I think the only other thing that isn't kind of obvious by just glancing at it is let's look up. Mm-hmm. Your shop literally has a tinfoil hat.
It's not great for cell service, I should say.
What the heck is that?
Okay, so I had to insulate between the beams, and I liked the vaulted look. I didn't want to just insulate a ceiling. It's kind of a low ceiling. I wanted that vault. So I put insulation up, and then you can see there's a lot of supports and a lot of sort of complex support systems, and I couldn't think of a good way to get plywood up there to make a ceiling. I just couldn't think of.
And you didn't want to do an actual ceiling like flat.
Yeah, I didn't want to have a ceiling here because
it's a bummer.
It's going to be low.
Again, small spaces. The way to maximize the feel of the space is to keep the ceiling vaulted and high.
Keep the height. Plus, I couldn't think of a place to store my boat, and so
I
knew I was going to have
Isn't that pretty, you guys?
To have a vaulted thing, and I couldn't think of how to get plywood up there. And how to every single one of these trusses is hand built by someone not me, and they're all not uniform, and they all nail in weird, and so there's just no way to make the cuts clean. So I thought I'll just cover the insulation with radiant bubble wrap, which is useful anyway, and I had a bunch of it from sort of a redneck work tent I had in here before, and so I just put that up.
That's what this is, radiant bubble wrap.
Bubble wrap. It's R2, unless it's in a place where there's a lot of radiant heat, like in a place heated by a wood-fired stove. And in this case, it's quite a bit more efficient than R2, so it adds to the resilience.
And just so people know, there's actual traditional insulation behind it.
Yeah.
So this is just the cover. This is covering the insulation that's in the ceiling.
It's making it so that every time I pound on something, fiberglass insulation doesn't rain down on me. It's just a barrier.
And it actually reflects light really well too, so that it's nice and bright in here. Because here's the other cool thing, you guys. I'm going to go to the window again. We're recording this at night. Hi. It's dark outside. And in here, because John also added lights that weren't in here before, we had very poor lighting, and he's got, you can see the little glow that I've been trying to avoid so he doesn't have a halo on his head. But all the lights and the white walls, the reflective ceiling actually makes it really bright in here now.
Because we've talked about, how to place your machinery to get the most efficient use out of the space. That doesn't even make my list of how to use a small space effectively. I've got 3 rules I've developed over the last few years. You got to have white walls, because the whiteness just brightens everything. I had cinder blocks that just ate the light. It was always dark. You got to have bright lights. Invest in lighting. I bought LED lights. I'll probably end up buying a couple more. Every light source, except for that bulb, I ripped out the light box and I put in these 4 outlets. 4 plug-ins instead of each light, and then you can plug in multiple shop lights, and these are just LED lights. They're fantastically bright. And the last rule is one that you can only ever follow sort of, but it's like a suggestion, which is you got to be able to sweep, which means you don't store things on the ground. As much as possible, you store them up off the ground, so you can sweep around everything. So, for instance, this, none of the shelves touch the ground. You can sweep this whole space. There's a few legs you got to sweep around, but generally keep everything up off the ground so you can just sweep at the end of every workday, hopefully. That's my goal. I will not follow through on it, but I'll get close.
Well, the other thing is, you and I both, just our personality type, is we are definitely minimalists. And part of the way that this space works is there's actually not a lot of stuff in here. It's just the essentials. It's just the bare bones. And part of the way John accomplished that is we have a tin shed that's not a very nice shed, but it's, it'll protect from the elements. And there's a lot of stuff that got moved out there that never came back in.
Yes.
So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Well, we had to think it through. This can't be a storage space. It's got to be a workspace. And we're lucky enough that we have a storage space. So everything that's not totally essential is out there.
And he doesn't just mean storage like extra clothes and stuff. He's talking about storage of other woodworking tools that he just doesn't use very often.
Yeah.
That it's better to just go out in the cold and grab them the one time you're going to need them versus trying to get everything to fit in here.
So for instance, when I installed all the insulation, I had a stapler, right? The stapler is not in here anymore. I don't need the stapler. When am I going to use the stapler on commission work? I use the stapler when I install insulation. Installation is done. That's out in the tin shed. Don't need it anymore.
Cool. Lastly, maybe talk a little bit just about kind of economics. We did this on the cheap, and we're very, very happy with it. All told, I know we don't have an exact number, but can you give people kind of a ballpark of kind of what this would cost, something like this would cost if, if they wanted to insulate their garage for any kind of workspace? And if you're not a woodworker, everyone's looking to try to maximize their productive space, especially in the wintertime here.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on economics and what numbers are big to you, and if you're doing it for money. So we do commission work, so we had a little bit of money to spare since we know it'll pay off commissions. This cost all told about $1,200 in materials, and that doesn't count my weeks of Herculean effort to get it all installed. Right,
because we didn't, John did all the work, and also we already had the wood stove.
Yeah.
So that, so we had a lot of pieces that we've bought slowly over the years, so we were set up to kind of just do the next step.
Yeah. The wood stove, by the way, you can get one of those on Craigslist for like $100, which is what I did.
Cool. Okay, well, if anyone has any questions, just leave us a comment. But this is it. Now we're ready to get back to work.